this churn that is taking place in this era of multipolarity, do you think the global south and BRICS are coming closer together? And this has happened primarily because of the unwarranted, difficult to understand tariff wars that have been unleashed by President Trump.
Thank you, Megha. A lot of things are happening on the international arena. Earlier, we saw how the West, including the US and the European allies, sort of pushed Russia away from themselves into the Chinese embrace, which was not a very sensible policy. And then they sort of, almost triggered the war with Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia, in a manner that they thought would, deplete the strengths of Russia internally and externally and globally. So they put a lot of sanctions, they gave a lot of support to Ukraine, they gave a lot of weapons, and they compelled Russia to start the war because Russia realized that if Ukraine becomes a member of NATO, it becomes a very significant geostrategic threat for Russia's future because Ukraine has the biggest border with Russia. And after they had dismembered the USSR, they thought they'll push home the advantage and further break up Russia also into many countries. Now, that was not a very sensible calculation because what it did was the sanctions did a lot of damage to the Western countries, maybe more than it did to Russia. Secondly, it pushed Russia closer into the embrace of China. Thirdly, they have sort of, continued to use the resources of Russia either directly or indirectly through India or directly through bilateral trading. But they also gave Russia a segue to start trading in rubles directly without going through the dollar trade, the SWIFT mechanism. So what they had earlier not allowed Saddam Hussein in Iraq, for example, to do, or Libya, Gaddafi to do, and both had, really been put to death by the US forces and scheming and planning. They could not do that to Russia because it was they who compelled Russia to trade in non-dollar currency platform. Now, similarly for India, they put a tariff of 50%. Now, imagine, Megha, you have a tariff of 50%, or you have a tariff of 60%, or you have a tariff of 100% or 500%. When the other countries have tariffs of 15%, 10%, 20%, 25% is the maximum. You're already priced out of the market in those areas where the tariff is 50%. And above that, you are saying that you'll impose a penalty. Now, in maths, there is a very famous saying that infinity plus 1 is infinity. You don't add anything further. So 50% is like 500% or like 100%. So telling India that we are going to impose tariffs of 50% because you're trading in Russian oil and encouraging the Russian war machine is a falsehood because they are engaging directly in a lot of trading with Russia, all the European countries and America in the areas that they benefit from. And they have been benefiting from the oil trade via India because energy costs, electricity costs, in a lot of European countries and in the USA where I live have gone up very, very significantly, but they would have gone up through the roof if India had not been supplying the oil which came from Russia, refined in India, added value, and then sold back to Europe and USA, and they were buying very happily. Now they are trying to say that we are going to impose tariffs on you because you are trading in that oil. India is responding that if you are going to impose 50% tariff, and it's going to impact some segment of our export to USA, we are going to open up our other channels. We are going to talk even with China to see what trading we can do, even if we do not trust them in the long term. But in terms of economic trade, in terms of commerce, we are going to have talks and we are going to open up more and more sectors. Similarly with Russia, Foreign Minister, External Affairs Minister Jaishankar is in Russia to talk to the Russian leaders how we can expand the footprint with Russia in trade, in geopolitics, in culture, in commerce, in so many areas. So it's a intergovernmental committee meeting. Intergovernmental committee meetings are very important, where a very broad range of issues is discussed. This is one stage less than a prime ministerial visit. Prime Ministerial visit is, of course, the most important visit which can take place between two countries, because then you're changing the entire dynamics of the relationship with the country from scratch to the topmost levels. The intergovernmental meeting prepares the ground for a future prime ministerial meeting also, but also goes very minutely into all the areas of, in issues between the two countries, positive, negative, how to resolve the negative issues, how to create more positive issues, how to create synergies, how to expand the basis of relations in so many different spheres. And External Affairs Minister heads that intergovernmental committee meetings. So I think it will be a very landmark position. It will be telling America and Europe that if you are going to try to threaten India by saying that, you're going to have tariffs like America saying 50% tariffs, then we are going to find alternatives so that the Indian economy does not have a major impact because of your tariffs. Because Indian economy as it is very resilient. We have a lot of domestic consumption, domestic production. So the dependence on exports is there, but not to the extent that other countries have dependence on exports. So India economy will be able to cope with this impact of the tariffs more easily with expanding our trade with other countries, including strong countries, including other neighbors, including Russia.
Right.
So that is a message which
Absolutely.
we convey
Okay.
very, very
Fair
clearly.
enough, sir.